doorbell at Jimmy's house. Now, when you come to my house, my doorbell sounds like this.
Hey, welcome to the People's Weekly. I'm here with Canadian Glenn and Nolan Hack today. The whole crew's here, yay. How you guys doing? I already know the answer to that.
It's a loaded question.
Yeah. It's a crappy day after the genocide holiday and people getting shot and stabbed on Black Friday. It's tragic.
You know, when you put it in that frame, I guess I should shut the fuck up about my day. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, things are fine.
Well, have you been shopping yet? I mean, it could get worse.
No, it can't, because that doesn't happen. Sorry.
You're smart.
And these shootings, they're just normal. I'm surprised if a couple days go by and there's no mass shootings.
Well, that's part of the overall plan. Desensitization.
Yeah. Normalizing a horrific reality.
Dystopia today. Welcome.
I spelled high wrong.
Now that is news. If Tim can't spell one of his favorite words, we're all in trouble.
I got it right though. I had my second try, so don't worry. Hihghh. The second one's correct. Anyway, so yeah, we're not even going to talk about next week or anything. Just listen to the view up here at 6 p.m. 6 p.m. Wednesday, 9 p.m. I mean 6 p.m. Pacific time and 9 p.m. Eastern on Wednesday. Coming next week. So
Come hell or high water or failed USB connection.
There you go. Technical problems always suck. So yeah, you want to start on topics?
Sure.
Yeah, we promised to do a tangent-free show today.
I'm not promising that because that'll be a lie.
Stop lying. I have your contract that says you won't do any tangents today.
Oh, no. I'm in trouble.
I, Nolan Hack, promise I will not go on any tangents today. Okay, here we go. Many of us are extremely relieved that the U.S. soldiers are being pulled from the Mexican border, making less chance of military violence against the migrant families. So yeah, last week we talked about it. You weren't here, Nolan, but Glenn said that the military wouldn't attack because of the optics and it would make them look too bad, and they pretty much were just gonna... Well, he was right. They're getting pulled out of there, and there's not going to be any violence, which is good news. So, as usual, Glenn was correct on this, and I'm pretty darn happy about it.
Well, I think the thing that's not being said, well, a couple places, but not enough, is that this thing about the caravan and sending the military, it was all PR stunts before the midterm elections. You know, apparently the caravan, nobody cares anymore. As soon as the votes were counted, caravan didn't exist anymore. And that's I've heard that's like a $250 million PR stunt. Thank you, American citizen.
Well, he was trying to
That's-
scare people to vote Republican. By he's saying that there was an infestation, and what was he calling it? He's just, it was making it sound like it was like such a terrible thing. These people are coming to the border. But yeah, it never was a big deal. Some families are trying to get asylum, like always. And I think, yeah, he just has such a racist, hateful base. I think he was betting on that working a little better than it should have, but it didn't work badly. Everyone was saying there's going to be this blue wave. It wasn't such a blue wave as people thought. It was a mild blue. I don't know, not a wave, something less than a wave.
A surge.
Yeah, a mild blue surge or something.
Well, okay, obviously, since you crafted these non-tangent agreements and you were the first one to break it, Nolan, you're free. That agreement is null.
Hey, I was still on the topic.
I don't know what people judge this wave concept on. I mean, 40 House seats flipped, 7 governors, all kinds of stuff went blue, way more than usual. So I question whether it's, it depends on who the messenger is that there was no blue wave or what. But, I think it's pretty easy to tell where the harshest voter suppression is when you look at how many seats flipped in those states as compared to other states where they say that's not an issue. So, I think it exposes what the real problem is. Doesn't matter who you vote for in an election in the United States, doesn't mean your fucking vote's going to count. That's the real problem.
Well, and your vote itself is already so watered down because the options that you are given are so weak. I mean, if you're voting in a national election, and I'm repeating myself, I've said this 100 million times. If you're voting in a national election, you don't have anybody with any kind of soul that you can actually vote for, unless you vote for like a third party, with a party that people haven't heard of, and that's a part of how this thing is set up. There's a lot of left-leaning people, or just people of color in general, who try to take interest in politics, and they'll go, well, if we could just get some more radical folks in office, then we'll be okay. The problem is, those people will never be allowed to reach a certain point in American politics. You may be able to win a city assembly seats, city council, something like that, and do some damage in your hometown. But if, for the sake of argument, if Martin Luther King was going to run for president when he was alive, he'd have no shot in hell. Absolutely no shot. Now, Barack Obama, sure. Kamala Harris, of course. But actual folks who are trying to help other people, help their marginalized group of people, trying to actually rip this system apart and liberate people, and that's the crux of the issue right there. And I'll paraphrase my ancestors by saying, the only way that people of color are going to get free in this country is by ripping the system apart. Well, obviously, it's going to be difficult for you to try to get a senator seat or become the president of the United States if your sole purpose is to rip the system apart. Obviously, that'll upset some people. So you have to be very compromised to become a powerful politician in this country. And the perfect example of that is Bernie Sanders. You forget everything you know about Bernie. All you have to look at is him endorsing Hillary Clinton, because his whole thing, his Bernie bros was, hey, at least he's not her. He's not her, okay? So he's so much better than the status quo. So we have to support him, and he's going to help people. He's really going to help people. And then, of course, he endorsed her after she cheated him out of the primary. So, yeah, we have nothing to work with the tools that they give us to supposedly, help us out.
I had to unmute. Yeah.
Yeah, me too. But, the bottom line is the house always wins. That's it. That's how it works. The house always wins. You're not, like you said, Nolan, if you're on a ticket to be president, don't worry. You've already been approved by the powers that be.
There you go.
That's all there is to it. Extreme risk management by those with the money.
Yeah, another example is Chelsea Manning, and that one, I know a lot of us in the activist community in general, that hurt to see the road that she went down after fighting through what she went through in prison to befriend Nazis and join the Democratic ticket. That says it all. She was against the system, against imperialism, against oppression, and then she jumps right into that party. And I don't mean the Democratic Party. I just mean that party in general. That Americana. That's bureaucracy. She embraced it. And my father was a Panther. I have, through my work, I have talked to former Panthers and activists who've been doing this much longer than I have, and it's very difficult to continue to do this work, especially the more marginalized you are. So imagine if you're a black woman or native, trans, and a woman disabled, etc. It's just the target on your back is even bigger. But it's just hard to continue to do this work because something like this weekend, most people are sat down with their families, had a big dinner, had a bunch of fun, watch some football, and then they get up early today and get excited about getting a bunch of nice goodies at a really low price, and they're just going about their daily lives. And everything's fine. If you are aware of what is really going on in this world, especially in the Western world, you can't do that. It's just impossible. The more you know about what's really going on, the harder it is to consume everything at a normal rate and just breathe normally and say everything's fine. Which is why if you're fighting back against the system, it makes it even tougher. everything is compromised. Whether it's a television show that you like, a movie, because the movie is made by a studio like Disney or Warner Brothers. Walt Disney was an anti-Semite who worked for a terrorist organization, also known as the FBI. Warner Brothers helped the Nazis. This is just the amount of levels that this, I guess, craziness goes to in terms of the amount of evil that encompasses everything. So, looking towards politicians to get us out of this, it's faulty. It's nonsensical if you actually think about it for more than 5 seconds, but it's the easiest thing to do because it falls in line with being okay with everything. Because if you just go, okay, you know what, what have we told the children? We vote these people in to take care of us. We vote them in, and they'll solve our problems, and we'll just go about our day-to-day lives and worry about what we need to worry about. So it's tough to mount a fight against this system, which props up the politicians in the first place, because the more time that goes on, the more you fight back against the system, the more of an outcast you become, and then the more of an outcast you become, the opposite side of the table, which is the high majority of the population who live in the matrix, who consume everything, fine with everything, they're looking at you like you're crazy. So it's a very fine line to figure out. Well, okay, what exactly should we do, and how do we survive each day without losing our minds? When you actually step over that line, stepping out of the matrix, and like the movie The Matrix, accepting the reality for what it really is, because if you know anything about American politics, white politics, you know that Bernie, Camilla, Cory Booker, Barack Obama, and I'm just naming the liberals, Lindsey Graham, Ted Cruz, they're not going to help anybody. But it's a lot easier to think that they are.
I guess I don't know. I don't think any of them are here to help us. So we've discussed this before.
Yeah, but there's been changes to the delivery system that have made things so all-encompassing. There was a time when the political world was not part of the cultural world. Now it's front and center. They are one and the same, It's all part of the one big program for one big audience. And if you don't subscribe, it's getting to the point where if you don't subscribe to the program, then you're just forgotten about, literally and figuratively. I mean, that's part of the reason that a life of protest is hard. They make it fucking hard.
Oh yeah.
I mean, this is the problem with the road that most of the Western world is now on. Some countries are going faster down the road than others, United States, but it's becoming all is one and one is all. And if you're not down with that, fuck you. And if there's, in a country as big as the U.S., there can be two of those programs. And that, that works out for both of them. I mean, Republicans and Democrats are the last ones that want to see all this fighting end, because then what's their fucking point?
Yeah.
And then they can't even appear to be different without all the manufactured conflict.
And there's that that aura of being a centrist, being, when you speak publicly about politics, and I would just say, issues of just right or wrong. A lot of people just want to go, well, both sides should be listened to.
Both sides.
Yeah.
That's just a fucking cop out, though.
It is. They don't want to say anything controversial. They don't want to get in trouble. They don't want to rock the boat. The problem is, and that, speaking at least in terms of today's show, the only colored person on the broadcast, when you are of a marginalized group, if you are a person of color, the boat has already been rocked. It's already rocking. The only alternative we have is to go into Ben Carson mode and just completely block out reality and pretend everything's fine. Other than that, our boat is being rocked. We're in trouble. Things are grim, and they've been grim for a while. So to put your hands up and go, well, I don't want to ruffle any feathers. I don't want to cause a problem. Well, by doing that, you're making the problem worse. And you can watch different television shows, and some will poke fun at liberals, some will poke fun at the GOP, some will give the whole centrist view. And even still, you won't see a legitimate conversation of any kind of depth explaining what American politics are. And I'm not going to complain that, I want my TV shows and movies to really go hard-hitting, in-depth, explaining the ins and outs of American political ideology and white political ideology, but just let's have some form of legitimate discourse. If we're actually going to discuss these issues, let's actually do that. There's a show that my people adore, which hurts my feelings because I hate the show. Blackish. Blackish is a very popular show, and black folks love it. Now, this is a liberal-leaning show. Tracy Ellis Ross, who is a wonderful actor, and her mother, Diana Ross, she wore a Democratic T-shirt on the show, and one of the episodes had the Democratic donkey on it. And the first time and the last time I watched this show, I actually watched it with Jen Dearnwater, who did a special show on People's Radio United a couple of weeks ago. And she didn't watch it either. And she's Native and I'm black. So we always have our antennas up when something popular in the entertainment world is on the screen. So, okay, is this safe to consume? Is it safe to consume? So we start watching it, and within like the first 30 seconds, Anthony Anderson's on the show, and he's in his office with a bunch of folks, all white folks, and he starts talking about, look, you guys don't understand what it is to be a black man in America. I'm like, whoa, what? Wow, maybe we were wrong about this show. Maybe this is legit. And as soon as we had that collective thought, we were dropped right back off the mountain. And then he pulls a 180 by going, but look, I love America, okay? I really love America. So he basically just contradicts himself by going, yeah, you don't understand what it's like to be a black man. It's hard. America oppresses us, but I love America. Chris Rock had a funny bit.
They call that
America
Stockholm
is like,
syndrome, don't they?
America's like a abusive uncle. You know, he's harming you, but you're gonna love him anyway. So that was like that was just depressing. But the point being, we can't have a real conversation, and which if you're gonna have this watered down discourse all over your media, well, of course, the citizens, everyday people, they can have the same watered down conversations, these same centrist conversations. Well, things aren't that bad, and everybody needs to calm down. You have the president going, they're bad people on both sides. People buy that. It's one thing with Trump just being Trump, but the problem is people actually listen to other people when they talk. Not everybody is the most intelligent person in the world. Some people are going to believe people in power just because they're in power. There's a reason why overt racism is on the up and up in the United States. That's because of Donald Trump. But that was a long tangent. But the point being, we need an actual conversation. The conversation needs to be had about what this political structure really is, and what its intentions are. And the intentions are not to help anybody in need. And I know we're going to talk about the Twitter situation as far as, are they blocking more important news in lieu of entertainment news, more fluff, if you will. So it's a shame, because it makes it harder to have these conversations, which are needed conversations that we need to have if we're actually going to help people in need who are being screwed over.
Well, everything in the present day Western quote-unquote capitalist democratic unquote nations, everything is valued based on money, not ethics, not morals, not higher goals, money. And that includes politics. So you have to look at it from like an Edward Bernays perspective. If you want impact, if you want continued viewers, let's call them, you don't solve your problems.
It's true.
You just keep them going. It's like WWE, Some character in wrestling can be the biggest guy, the best athlete, but yet it takes him a year to win the title. Even though he's 100 pounds heavier than the dude he's fighting or whatever, but some fuckery happens, or he gets disqualified, or, he gets done wrong. But yet, people stick with it. And then when he finally does win, Obama moment. There, see the crossover? See what I did there? This is the issue. I understand what you're saying, that conversations aren't being had. No, they're not, because they don't make money. And until we lose this focus, that the only ultimate decision, thumbs up or thumbs down, if something goes ahead, is if it will make money. Until we get rid of that concept, there ain't much going to happen that's going to help the vast majority of people.
It's the truth.
It's sad.
And that's how politicians work their campaigns. They will talk about an issue if it is considered a big issue in the populace. If the population actually is paying attention to this specific issue, you had when Black Lives Matter really took off in terms of a hashtag and a movement. Then you had the 2016 election, and of course the Republicans weren't going to touch it, but you had the Democrats. They had to talk about it, and the only reason they talked about it was because it was an issue that people cared about. Now, once push came to shove, once Hillary got the Democratic ticket, and once Bernie had to go back into Congress because he lost the primary, they weren't doing anything about making sure Black Lives Matter. That was it was a talking point. It was like Standing Rock. Bernie used Standing Rock as a photo op to pretend he cared about indigenous people. I think we were talking about before the show how Trump did his whole shtick about, we need to send the entire U.S. armed forces to the border. We might as well have. Send troops to the border, stop these migrants, stop these immigrants, and yet that issue has kind of died down. Once people stop caring, once that's off the evening news, then the politicians they don't have to talk about it anymore. Well,
you're making it sound like the users are driving the content. They're not.
They're not. You're right.
The reason that the caravan magically disappeared the day after the midterms is because there was no longer any money paying or being made for it to be a discussion politically. It's just so naked, but yet nowhere near enough people recognize it in the bigger picture. The pattern, the playbook, it's there. Like, wake the fuck up.
Well, yeah, the maybe we can just pop in the second topic of the show, connecting it to what we're talking about already. There was a huge hubbub on Twitter about The Lion King. And for those of you who don't know, The Lion King is being remade into a live action movie where looks like they're going to have real life lions, but then their voices. They'll be dubbed with human voices, James Earl Jones, Beyonce, etc. And it was it just took over Twitter last night because they came out with a trailer for it. And look, I love The Lion King. It's it's a great movie, all that. It'd be interesting to see how it'll be remade, but at the same time, for that to have millions of tweets and views and all this, and yet you got 85,000 children 5 years or under dying in Yemen because of the United States and Saudi Arabia and others, and that not to be talked about at all, that's a little troubling. It's just a tiny bit troubling, and I'm all for plugging out and being entertained, and finding things that make you happy. That's great, but there is something to be said about multitasking. You can still watch your movies, watch your TV shows, go out to the club, do whatever you like to do, and also be informed about things that matter. And Twitter seems to be one of those things that that inflames the problem.
Because Twitter is based on money.
Yep.
I mean, who can calculate the future profits that movie will get just by what they did? And it's just a stunt, and it costs them very little. You know, the first thing I think of is CGI has gotten to the point now where they could digitally map as many lions as they want, and then they don't need the lions anymore. So, and they will look real in 4K. You know, you won't be able to tell. That's a lot cheaper than paying people and lion tamers and all that kind of shit, you know, but yet people will accept it at the first premise that, oh yeah, it's going to be all live action of actual lions, but they will sound like people. Like, get a fucking grip. Like, even the premise that people accept proves that they're not willing to really have a full grasp. They take what they get, and if it affects their feels in a suitable manner, they will do exactly, for the most part, what they're expected to do. And that's a safe bet in this day and age, because the motivation is money. Speaking about Yemen is a no-go, because there's no money to be made in the attention that brings. Lockheed and Raytheon and Boeing do not want to see more awareness, and they have a lot to say about it, you know? I mean, it's all, the systemic rot has symptoms showing up everywhere, in government, in media, in cultural entertainment, in education, everywhere. Money is in now, where it never was 40 years ago. You know, I mean, in Canada, you would never see a building on a university campus that had a corporate logo on it. Never. Not allowed. Now, corporations build entire faculties on Canadian public universities. Everything's changed. Money decides everything.
It's the truth. Money is the root of all evils, as the saying goes. And
could I just get one more thing in before I forget?
Go ahead.
I actually tried to watch Blackish once to see what the big deal was. And this is a white settler in Canada. And in about 30 seconds, I said, okay, there's a piece of The Cosby Show. There's a piece of Roseanne. There's a piece of Family Matters. It's like, okay, whatever. Same old shit, marketed to a different demographic. It's garbage. Buy. Click. Change the channel.
Completely recycled.
Yeah. You know? But yet, it's got traction. You know, it's growing. It's becoming influential, quote unquote. So, I mean, that's another thing too now with TV. I think Roseanne and The Cosby Show are two perfect examples. They became icons in real time, and that drew advertisers with more than enough money to pay, which then brought influence on show content and product placement. You know, everything's for fucking sale.
It's absolutely.
So I mean,
when
you say the people without much are getting left behind, well, that's exactly why. They don't exist in the world that is generating money.
There's a wonderful movie that speaks to this to a point. It's called The Truman Show. It came out in the 90s. Jim Carrey, Laura Linney, Ed Harris. And the premise of the movie is this orphan child is chosen to be the star of a reality show where his life is scripted from A to Z. They even built a fake city for him to live in. But on the show, there's a bunch of product placement being done. His wife on the show in the movie, Laura Linney, while she speaks to him, they're just like in the kitchen or something. She's talking about, you should try this cocoa drink, because this cocoa drink has better cocoa beans than any other thing on the market. And like out of context, if you watch it, like, wait, why is she talking to her husband and talking like that? But oh wait, it's a way to make more money, more ad revenue. It's wild how a movie like that, and it was popular in its time, can have some truth to it, that it could tell some of the future within a fictitious film. But this is how the reality is. And you spoke on Roseanne, Cosby, and those, in terms of, I guess, white rural America, Republican America, very, very big show, iconic show, Roseanne, and then the new one that came back, Cosby Show, obviously big in the black community. There's another show called Last Man Standing that's on Fox with Tim Allen. And Tim had a show that I adored when I was a kid called Home Improvement. And Tim, I would say, pretty famous guy. He's Buzz Lightyear, for goodness sake. He's got Toy Story 4 coming out. This is the guy who has said publicly, how can, and this is a direct quote, how can nigger be bad coming out of my mouth? Now, you'd think if a white person said that and said it publicly, in a just world, they'd never be allowed back on television again, let alone to make a Pixar movie where I'm sure he's making $5, $10, $20 million. But that if that got talked about too much, that'd make people uncomfortable. That's not going to generate as much ad revenue for MSNBC and CNN as talking about the new Lion King, talking about whatever the Kardashians are doing, talking about what's the last thing Trump yelled about. Everything is I guess everything is beholden to, well, how much money is that actually going to make us? Oh, it's not going to make us that much, or that other thing is going to make us a ridiculous amount of money. Okay, let's just go with that. Let's talk about Yemen for 1 hour during the entire year of 2017, but talk about Trump every 5 minutes, and that's MSNBC. That was MSNBC's 2017, and there's 20-some million people in Yemen in need of immediate humanitarian aid.
But I mean, this is something that just keeps spiraling too, because the more your business model becomes focused on revenue above all else, the less control you have over your business. And it's an incestuous circle. And it's a feedback loop. And that's exactly why we see the 0.01% getting wealthier so rapidly, because they're involved in every piece of this circle. It works really good for the people on top. And they now have so much power concentrated that they can keep it going. There's really no fighting it on a fractional level, you know? The only way it can stop is if everybody stops.
You could see that with the Me Too movement. Leslie, botch his last name. Leslie Mooms, the head of CBS, was ex-head of CBS. He didn't end up going to jail. He stepped down after women came out and said that he had harmed them. Harvey Weinstein is still not in jail. And the bigger picture, even though you have very powerful white men actually getting in trouble, Matt Lauer, Bill O'Reilly, getting in trouble, at least in terms of losing their jobs and losing some cash flow. The problem's still there because we're only going to talk about it for about 5 minutes, and then we're going to try to move on as fast as possible. I mean, look at NBC. Look at their morning lineup, for goodness sake. Okay, so you had Matt Lauer. You got rid of him. Why was Megyn Kelly still around? Why'd you hire her? Why, you're continuing this vicious cycle because obviously you don't care. You're just trying to get your people in there, trying to make as much money as you can, trying to make a rosy, set of morning shows, watered down fluff. Let's not have any real conversations. It's really sad because you see how many women came out with Weinstein, especially, and even after that, seeing all the pain and anguish they had to go through. Cosby, speaking on television in interviews, and yet it's like we're just going to completely discount what they said because we're just moving on. And obviously, like you said, Glenn, it's the controls coming from the top, not the public. The controls coming from the people with the microphones, with the cameras, with the corporate boards. But because of that fact, you're seeing a set of amnesia on the news every day with any kind of major issue, especially if it's an epidemic or something like rape culture, the Me Too movement. Yeah, we'll talk about it for 5 minutes. If someone has a court case, okay, we'll cover that, but then we'll move on. Why isn't there a campaign led by some journalists, some studio heads, to get R. Kelly into a prison cell, to get Weinstein into a prison cell, But that doesn't make money. R. Kelly can still sell records. R. Kelly can still sell out concerts.
What does make money is keeping that over his head and using him to make as much money as you possibly can. I mean, this is the school of thought that is the standard now. I mean, what do you think's going to happen? This is 21st century decadence and hedonism on a full scale. And, if you're in the club, well, good for you. If you're not, well, whatever. It seems endemic to the culture you're establishing. Like, how can this sort of culture work any other way? This is what it's designed to do. And it's, like I said, it's going faster and faster. And I have no idea like, Tim, if you put up a description of this show, like, you shouldn't even put one up, because if you put up the topics, and then it's going to say, no, this must be a wrong posting.
No, I put up there will be no tangents today.
Just flat out lied to the public.
And I put 3 topics, and I said we will not stray from these by any. We'll die before we stray from these. So I think.
Wow.
Yeah. I think
We're becoming
that.
them. We're lying to the public.
We're just as bad as they are.
Oh my gosh.
No, it's okay.
Like,
a People's Weekly turned into a Who's Culture. It happens.
It's my fault.
No, I mean, I'm looking at the topics, and I'm just thinking, wow, like, what? Should we, I mean, yeah, we kind of did cover number 2. We didn't talk about that angle specifically, but we talked about the bigger angle, the fucking money.
So it's covered.
Well,
Okay.
yeah, that's the. I think also the theme of the show, just money and controlling the public discourse. But with Twitter, and you can add Facebook as well, it's a lot like watching the news on television, especially depending on the channel. If you go into your Twitter moments, if you go to the Twitter trends, you're going to see more fluff than more hard-hitting news. And there's a need for both. People need to be entertained, but people also need to be informed. Neither should be watered down, but of course, one of those things is being watered down, and social media is fluffing it up, sugarcoating things, or just not talking about them, and then just speaking on, Lion King, what type of coffee did Beyonce have for breakfast yesterday? Just fluff, and it's a shame because people need to be entertained, and humans are a lot more complex than we give ourselves credit for. We can multitask. We can read multiple things during a day. We can go on to People Magazine's website. We could also go on to Al Jazeera or CNN's website and read articles. We're smarter than we give ourselves credit for. Just being treated like we're cattle to be fed whatever the farmer wants us to be fed. It says a lot about how much of a factory the American public is kind of looks like. It's like it's like one of those artificial farms that keep popping up. Oh, you're awake? Okay, here's what Justin Bieber did, and the Kardashians have another show. Trump yelled for 5 minutes. The time is 7:45. And okay, and then good morning. It's a real shame, and especially because you can combine entertainment and politics, and we've seen that in horrific ways. We got a president that way, Donald Trump. You can have something like the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air.
That's not new. Ronald Reagan was one too.
Well, you're absolutely right. Actor, Arnold Schwarzenegger in California, Jesse Ventura, the Minnesota governor,
Sonny Bono, yeah.
Sonny Bono, yeah, goes on and on and on. Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, they did some really, really gritty episodes about being black in America, and then they're not the only. I just have such fond memories of that show growing up. But we can have these discussions and push through this discourse on our different platforms of entertainment. It is possible. We don't have to accept this hollow meal that we're given for consumption every day by the media and by the news channels. We can be better.
But when we present to stockholders next week, we want to present a uniform, steady growth curve. We don't want to change our content from the manufactured reality to any sort of actual reality, as we cannot predict the effect this will have on quarterly earnings.
Exactly. If things were exactly the way the powers that be in the system wanted, we wouldn't even have shows like Family Matters, Empire, Fresh Prince, because you just have white people on TV. You'd have mostly and then you wouldn't have shows like Roseanne, because then it'd be white men dominating everything. So there is some responsibility of the public to fight this and improve the situation. While at the same time, yes, the people creating this problem are the ones in the suits with the white collars, up in the big buildings. But we can't just we can't just take this, sitting down, take this lying down. We have to continue to put out content like the People's Weekly, the People's Radio United, the View up here, etc. Because if you don't put up a fight, well, then things are never going to change. We would have never had people like Chris Rock, Taraji B. Henson, Terrence Howard, George Lopez, etc., etc. We just have your Cary Grants, your Leave It to Beavers. It would just be completely and utterly whitewashed, the entertainment world, which is scary because it's pretty darn whitewashed right now. But the point is, there needs to be a front against this giant of whitewashing by the networks and the corporations.
Yeah, there does, but I mean, still, I talk a lot about electoral systems and the benefits and deficits of them, etc. But still, on the other hand, I've always said people get the government they deserve. And, that's an indication. That's the thing that the rest of the world sees when they look at the U.S., but nobody in the U.S. ever mentions. People around the world look at the people who are elected in the U.S., and they think, well, they must have got the most votes, so that means there's a lot of fucking people there who think like these people do. That's what scares the rest of the world, and that's just never mentioned there. You can't sell a product that nobody wants to buy and get anywhere. And the perfect market condition is not when you can react to the market with lightning speed. The perfect market condition is when you set the fucking market. And that's what's going on. We don't have to react. We know what's going to happen. Because we have enough data. We have enough market monitoring and penetration. We can tell the market what to do. And we're already here. That's what's going on now. And it's just not being acknowledged enough. It's certainly not being talked about enough. But I mean, this is the thing. The further you go down this road, the darker it gets, the harder it is to turn around, because it has such massive penetration. You know, maybe it's the kick I've been on lately, but it goes back to my November 5th show, when independent data gatherers can compile 5,000 data points from a Facebook profile. It's time to realize that you can be told what to do. You know, the conscious mind can't process more than 5 or 6 inputs at once. And, you know, we're human. We have patterns. We react certain ways. So imagine something without your knowledge collecting every time you've done that for the last 2 or 3 years on social media. They know you better than you know you.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, yeah, it's, to a lot of people, it's getting pretty fucking grim, the way things are going down. Even more grim than they usually are. But look how well they know the people out there. You know, that's the thing. You wonder how elections can get so fucked. When now you can predict not just a district, but a specific poll book in that district. What if you can focus on that 1,000 people? Because you think that's going to give you a win. When you can be that accurate with what you choose to tell people, that's a lot of power. You don't need a bullhorn. You have nanoprobes. It's way more efficient, it's way more stealth, and it's very profitable. So welcome to the future, you know? I mean, Facebook reads news and then distributes it. And they do a very shitty job of it. Twitter is more real time. News gets posted to Twitter. It's not curated by Twitter. The only difference is Facebook decides on their own what you even see. Never mind source. What Twitter can do is filter sources, which in effect is filtering content. Different methods, same shit. Why? Money.
And that's the good and the bad of technology. You could use something like YouTube and be entertained for hours and not have to think. You just keep you finish a video, they recommend a new one, you look, no, I don't want that one. Oh, that looks good, I'll watch that. But then there's a reason why your videos that you're getting are curtailed to you. Information, like you said, Glenn, is your information is being consumed and studied and put into analytical codes to put out. Okay, they like this. They don't like this. They were born here. They like this type of music. Their bank information is this. Your whole person is there to dissect for Facebook, YouTube, Chase Bank, Google, etc., Amazon, for them to make more money off of you. While yes, it's convenient to go on YouTube and have things recommended for you. You using Google, and they recommend a certain a link because you had just searched for something else related, that's nice. But considering how that technology is being used, it's hard to be too optimistic about it because it seems like the cons outweigh the pros.
Well, I mean, when you want to talk about it that way, I can remember on a browser search bar or in Google or whatever on a search engine, you would have to type basically what you were looking for. And then when you stop typing, it would give you a drop down. And then a few years later, it would be the first word. And then it would give you a drop down. Now, based on your history, you type 2 letters, you get a drop down.
Mm-hmm.
You know, this is a growth of the ability to know who you are and what you want. And, you know, people see it as convenience only because they choose to. But just, you know, I just say, hey, stop a minute and think about how they know that. You told them. Do you want to tell them? You know? People, but I mean, I'm from a different generation. I didn't grow up with the luxury of digital technology. And, you know, I know a lot of people waste a lot of time going through YouTube and stuff like that. If that's what works for them, that's fine. But like me, my generation, I would never do that. I would consider that a complete fucking waste of time. But I didn't grow up with it. I didn't have the luxury. And, you know, that changes targeting methods, interests, dislikes, everything. And if you've been, I mean, my digital history is basically a little more than a decade old. That's it. How about you guys? Your whole life? Or close to it?
Yeah.
See, that's giving ammunition that doesn't exist about me. You know, I mean, how is it going to get any better when people don't realize all the minute details about themselves that they're monetizing and giving away? And there's just not enough pressure for laws to prevent this sort of shit. You know, it's just in the discourse, in the mainstream, digital privacy really isn't even an issue. And it should be number one. You know, for personal rights of everybody, digital privacy should be talked about way more than it is.
It should be mandatory, absolutely right.
Yeah, but it's a huge market. There's billions of dollars being made in data processing, data harvesting, brokering, whatever they want to call it. You know, it's psychometrics. It's a commodity. And we don't need no stinking laws. Everybody's making cash, never mind.
And when you look at something that big, one of the first things that is supposed to happen is laws to be made to make sure the people in charge of something that big are not using it for their own gain, they're not hurting anybody. Nuclear weapons. There are international treaties, there are laws. You can't use nuclear weapons in wars. You need to dial back your production of nuclear weapons. You know, country telling other countries telling other countries that this, you have to do this. This is, you can't stockpile. And obviously, even within that hasn't been enforced the way it should. But driving cars. There's laws to drive a vehicle. There are laws to the way you make cars. You name your big picture type of thing in your everyday life, and there are laws to protect the public from these huge things. But something like this, digital privacy, the laws that are made to take away more of our privacy. The Congress, they passed they've passed legislation to make sure they can go deeper into our web history, deeper into our information that is online, letting not only companies take that information, but the government, the NSA. It's you're seeing more evil on top of evil instead of any kind of checks or balances to put this on an even keel. Because whenever you make something that affects this many people, there's a giant chance it could go wrong, because there's too many balls in the air, and the care for the public is non-existent. It's completely money based. It's completely based in greed. It has nothing to do with making lives better, as far as the way it is put together for the public. Now, someone who writes a code or invents a certain piece of technology that helps advance the way people are connected and people can view content and all that, that's great. But as far as who's controlling this, has nothing to do with helping people. It has everything to do with ripping people off and making as much money and capital as they can.
What happened to Tim?
I was just listening.
Yeah, Tim's been very quiet today.
Yeah, I got confused with all the tangents.
There was something I was going to say, but I forgot, so that's probably a good thing.
Wow. Well, one piece of news that isn't being talked about enough, like some of the other things, the United States Olympic Committee, they knew about the sex abuse scandal since the early 1990s. And anytime the Olympics roll around, gymnastics is one of the more popular events, a set of events. And yet, all this time passed, wasn't reported on, whistles were not blown. All these girls hurt. Quiet as a mouse.
Well, I can remember seeing one study done by the USOC. I think it was around the time of the Salt Lake Games. And they said a women's gold medal in hockey was worth something like a net benefit of $40 million to the USOC. Every women's gymnastics gold medal was worth $40 million. So you have an entire team, and a system to support for that team brings in $40 million. Every female gold in gymnastics brings in $40 million. So, again, who's the coach? What's he accused of? What are we winning? And this, obviously, this filters into the formula for decisions.
Cash rules everything around me.
I mean, it took, 20, 25 years for Nadia Comaneci the darling of the games in, geez, I can't even remember where that was. Might have been L.A. No, before that, Montreal. She was abused the whole time she was this little Romanian darling winning gold medals. You know, I mean, this is something that's endemic in that sport, has been forever. It's not isolated to the United States by any means. Is it part of the misogynist hierarchy, or is it just something that's been accepted of a price of doing business? Either way, it's wrong. But again, you know, this demonstrates money is more important.
Yep.
Whatever's profitable.
At any cost, no matter
okay,
who
yeah.
it hurts.
You know, and it's also the other side of it, too. I mean, you can't tell me over this whole time in the U.S. gymnastics program there weren't girls who came home and told their parents, and, you know, they're, well, you know, you're starting to get TV time, and, you know, we're living vicariously through you, and we want you to be famous. How is it really that bad? You know that happened.
Wow.
You know, so I mean, the machine. That's about as fucking tangential as we can get.
Yeah, that's almost unbelievable. Someone's parents would let that happen.
Well, it happens, man. You know?
Yeah.
And there's the money aspect again.
Yes, definitely. A Wheaties box, you know, whatever. A Barbie. You know, a career. Because, you know, it's not exactly a long window of opportunity in that sport. Especially for the girls. Basically one Olympic cycle and that's it. And being that young, you know, can't be easy.
And the amount of pressure that they were under while dealing with unspeakable trauma, I can't even fathom.
Catholic Church does the same thing.
Oh, yeah.
There's a lot of sick organizations. Yeah, it all comes down to money. It's no good.
It's amazing how something like, say, Islam is so chastised, yet something like Christianity, the Catholic Church, somebody had a wonderful tweet a while back. I can't remember for the life of me who it was. It said, well, how is everybody upset about a mosque being near the 9/11 memorial in New York, yet there are schools near Catholic churches all over the country?
Some of them are inside of them. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Well, Catholic schools, yeah.
When in Rome.
Oh, my.
Well, really, you know, I mean, if you went over to, say, India, Buddhist, or, you know, anything else, everything else has deep problems, but not us. Every other major religion has severe faults, but, you know, not us, because that's our brand.
And the Catholic Church is a brand, whether they want to admit it or not.
Well, I mean, this is a good time to throw in that thing about that missionary getting killed on that island off of India. Like, you know, there was some good tongue-in-cheek stuff out there, but, you know, what I said was, I think they probably saw the South Park episode of Starvin' Marvin. And they knew, oh, fuck this dude.
Yeah, I mean, you know, these people come to your doors, you feel like shooting arrows at them. What's the difference?
It's one of the most ironic news stories I've ever heard in my life. Like, I was stunned. Like I really, you're there's actual outrage. There's actual outrage, and this particular dude was actually up in arms and stuff. Like, what do you? Did you not see the parallels here? Really, going onto somebody else's land and invaders. Really?
Well, I guess what nobody's figured out, but the Supreme Court for this tribe has decided that stand your ground laws are constitutional.
Yeah, I mean, my goodness gracious, it's really it's sad. I always kind of think about it in this way, as far as the colonialism and taking of the land that we're on now in North America, South America. Yeah, it had the native folks just, well, drove the white folks back into the ocean, or come at them with force originally, let them die after all that.
Flaming arrows to the boats.
Yeah, like, geez, this wouldn't happen. I'm not for 5 seconds blaming native people at all. This is all colonized. I'm just saying.
Scenario.
Yeah, like if they had been and are had more of a lust for blood, were less patient, less humane. Well, geez, if they had put up a border wall across, they
had just seen the future.
Yeah, well, yeah. Well,
if every group of oppressed people could see the future, they would have already killed their oppressors.
Yeah, it speaks to the morality and the humility of indigenous people, that even still, there aren't any mass shootings or attacks by indigenous people on the rest of the population, on the land that they should still have, and that leaks into my own community, the Black community. Why aren't we the ones losing our minds, shooting up movie theaters and schools and hospitals and etc.? If anybody should be angry, my goodness gracious. So this, the story that came out, I just find it very ironic. It was very ironic that happened, and if anybody's actually upset about it, death, killings are never a good thing. But what did you want them to do? I mean, if America got attacked by normal, traditional means, you had to, if troops from England came over and just decided to try to take back the 13 colonies, well, I would imagine white Americans would be very upset, livid, and want the U.S. armed forces to beat the hell out of the British.
Yeah, dude had bad intentions. He had to go. That's just like, whatever.
Well, I mean,
all the
by
people,
law,
all the people mad about it hate immigrants anyway. He was an immigrant, so he needed to go. He was the infestation there.
By law, by Indian law, they are allowed their isolation. Trying to contact them is a crime, and they're allowed to defend themselves by any means they find necessary. So when I heard about what happened, it was like, yeah, okay, and? I mean, it's a non-story. Dumb guy tries stupid idea. He dies.
You're absolutely right.
Now sports.
Yeah, honestly, that's the way it should be wrapped up. People talk about that story. It's like, well, that way, that went the way it should have.
Yeah,
a lot of times, most times, you hear something on the news like, oh, well, that went horribly wrong. Well, this went the correct way. something bad was happening and got fixed. All right, moving on.
I don't get it. But of course, I'm curious what they're saying if they're mentioning it on the 700 Club.
Oh my goodness.
Who's going to turn that into money? It must be happening in their community already. It must be. Because what's the point of even talking about him dying unless you can make money off it somehow?
Probably turn him into a martyr somehow.
Probably some obscure Reddit page. Okay, let's move on.
What do you want? You want to wrap it up, or
what's number 3, host?
Oh, we didn't hit number 3 yet.
Or number 6 it is now.
Yeah.
Oh, hang on, I gotta look. Oh, it appears that the recent upsurge of terror attacks and mass shootings, there are some notable similarities between these terrorists. Many are white males, MAGAs, extremely right-wing, and quite a few are veterans. Is the military responsible for creating many of these killers? Yes.
Yeah. We can end the show right there. Yes.
Yes, definitely. 1,000%.
There's another part to that. The VA.
Oh yeah.
The VA doesn't create the killers.
Well, you're not helping people who come back from a horrible war.
Oh, not getting
psychological problems. You're not giving them the help that they need.
See, I think this is another thing about perception and what military people are told. Because World War II, people came home, there were no systems to deal with them. So that's one thing. Then after that, it was like, hey, maybe we should do something about this. The Vietnam veterans were told there would be something. There was fuck all. The first Iraq War veterans were told there would be something. There was pretty close to fuck all. And then this global war on terror started. So you've got over a decade now of veterans from Iraq and Afghanistan and Somalia and who knows where the fuck else. And they were told they could get some help. Look how many are homeless, never mind if they have mental issues. This has got a lot to do with the VA because they are military. They can get really fucking pissed off. But if one day they walk into a veteran's office and they actually get somewhere, it'll change them a lot. They'll calm down. They'll think, well, yeah, it's about time.
Yeah.
But when they never get that, what do you expect? And these guys are trained how to kill.
I mean, for the longest time, the words coming from the U.S. military on mental health and PTSD was, it's nothing. Yep. It's war. You got to be a man and be tough. That's just being a wimp if you have PTSD, which is a horrible thing to say, but that was the public line. And it really is still to a point. Trump echoes that. And as far as the mass shootings and terrorist aspect of it, I look at who are the heroes of this nation. I mean, you can't put people like Thomas Jefferson and Andrew Jackson and George Washington on money and name cities after them, let alone the capital of the country, and then expect your citizens to not want to do the same things and not want to do depraved and violent things as well. I mean, what do you expect? I mean, the nation's capital was named after a man who killed children with his bare hands, killed women with his bare hands, had the teeth of his slaves in his mouth for his dentures. What do you expect to happen if you're going to teach your citizens to idolize violent criminals who commit mass terrorism. What the hell do you expect?
Well, I mean, there's one thing to be said about the nation's ideologues, because every nation has them. It's just what you pervert it to. Because, I mean, every so-called world leader in history, it's not exactly Joe Blow. There's something, about people that raise to power that, they kind of change. And no matter how monstrous some nation's demagogue is, within that nation, it's either like that's just never talked about, it's unacceptable, it's blasphemy, or it's used. The way that the hero's life is used is for a purpose, to sell it using his image. Truth doesn't matter. We're just saying that he did this and we do this too. It's just like all these constitutional absolutists. You guys don't have a fucking clue. But yet they use the names of Washington and Jefferson and Franklin, and yet what they promote is pretty much the absolute polar opposite, especially of Jefferson and Franklin, of what they thought the U.S. Constitution should be. But these idiots put their name on their statements and call themselves absolutists, and it works for them, So I understand what you're saying, that Washington was just another maniac. Yes, but, he's America's maniac. And that's just the way shit works. I mean, look at the Kim family in North Korea. They're gods. And arguably, they are worse than George Washington.
I would go with a tie on that one. I mean,
okay, well, yeah, that's fair.
I'm going to play the Professional Olympics, but I mean, Washington is up there with Hitler and Columbus and Kim's, Pol Pot's, you name it. Well, I mean,
it's a big tent.
Yeah, obviously you have people in power can be corrupted, but at the same time, I could just name one off the top of my head, Nelson Mandela, who came out of prison, and you'd expect him to be the most violent, angry, pissed off human being in the history of existence, and yet he didn't, go after the white farmers, the white capitalists in South Africa with, AK-47s and the South African Army after he became president. And it'd be hard to blame him if he did. But if you're continually reinforcing the ideals of white terrorism, at least as far as America goes, you're going to keep getting white terrorism, and then at the same time you have the way the Constitution is set up and the way laws have been passed, like you were saying. The Second Amendment was invented to keep black people as slaves, make sure we didn't get any guns ourselves, and continue to kill as many Native people as possible to keep guns out of their hands. Trying to use that amendment to defend your alleged right to a freaking assault rifle. No. Just stop. Just stop it for the people who actually use that argument. Nobody needs, assault rifles. And I'll use the American slant again. What's the only country in the history of the world that has used nuclear weapons? The United States. What country has the biggest problems with mass shootings in the world? America. Well, okay. Well, if you're going to keep mass producing these horrible weapons, if you're going to tell your citizens that when you use those nuclear weapons, it was a good thing, it was just, and it had to be done, you do it again. You continue to make nuclear weapons, either whether there are Democrats controlling the Congress or the Republicans, or the Democrats controlling the White House or the Republicans controlling the White House. Those weapons are still being made. The NRA is given free rein to act a fool. You're going to continue to have violent tragedies, day in, day out, day in, day out, day in, day out, and you see that type of indoctrination, that type of very, very, I guess, happenstance type of view to your citizens. Like, yeah, look, we don't need to really have any tighten the reins here for gun control, for how women are treated, how the police treats people. We just keep everything loose, and if things get out of line in the way that we don't want, meaning if women are given too much protection, if the police are attacked, quote unquote, attacked in the media too much, well, then we'll step in. The Supreme Court passes a law saying that no, cops can shoot whoever they want, and then decide later if they were right and be let off. So you're going to keep having these mass shootings when you keep having a military industrial complex that feeds off of war. If you're going to keep jumping into wars, creating wars, sending your people there, and then not helping them when they get back in terms of mental health care, let alone any serious physical ailments that they have too oftentimes, well, you're going to keep having these mass shootings. You're going to keep having pipe bombs sent to senators and ex-presidents. It's going to keep happening.
Is anything going to be done to prevent it? I mean,
Nope.
I've seen a little bit from ProPublica, a couple other places, about the white nationalists within the active military.
And there's a lot.
Is this going to continue to go on unchecked, or is somebody going to be scapegoated at the least?
I think in the military to keep going, because it's been going on since the jump. Vietnam is a perfect example of that. Just the utter depravity and terror that was unleashed on the Vietnamese people by the U.S. military, and people were not put in prison for that when they came home. I think as far as the way the gun laws are trying to create gun laws, noise needs to be made, and unfiltered noise needs to be made. Meaning, stuff like the March for Our Lives, that type of. Forget your. Forget the whitewashed ideals. Forget your, party stance. Don't put any of that on, that movement. Just go after the problem. The problem is there are too many guns. Stop making assault rifles every 5 minutes, putting them in stores, making them available to everybody. Just and make enough noise. Don't let almost like conglomerates of activism. Don't let the Women's March come in and sully what you're trying to do. just go after the problem. Go after these NRAs. Go after the government and say, just look, we've had it. We have had it. Because what you saw with the March for Our Lives, the March for White Lives, what it should have been called, it was completely compromised. They're shaking hands and hugging and side by side with cops who contribute to this problem of violence and mass shootings and whatnot. Just go out there and yell, and go out there and twist the arms of the Congress, because that's what the laws are going to have to be made to do anyways. If you had 100,000 people or something like that in Washington, and just yelling down Congress at the Capitol building, you can actually get somewhere. Just be fed up. And then the sad thing is, there are mothers and fathers and family members of these victims of these mass shootings who are fed up. But you have to be united with your anger. And there has to be a common goal. There can't be these little things in fine print, like the March for Our Lives, for example. Just go after the root of the problem. Get rid of the utter vice grip that the NRA has, and it's almost like these gun nuts have a dominance over the U.S. laws. Like, they're the ones controlling the way legislation works as far as gun control or lack thereof. It's embarrassing, honestly. But just go after the problem. I'm repeating myself, but that's what has to happen. It has to be done through legislation. Until you actually if you're talking about the whole spectrum of problems like racism and sexism and whatnot, well, you got to rip the system apart. But as far as the gun control thing, I mean, Australia did it, for God's sake. There's another colonized country. It can be done. Just people got to yell at the same time at the same target.
But people are not being directed to do that, because that's not the plan.
No, you're right. They're not.
I mean, again, though, about Australia, they did that in the heat of the moment. That law was drafted and passed through and given royal assent in a pretty short period of time. Just like the Patriot Act, but, shows you a difference in goals. I mean, they're both examples of taking a traumatic public event and making something happen that's going to last. One turned out to be for the better, one not so much.
I think that also shows you the uniqueness of America's evil, because I don't know anybody with any kind of sense who is a fan of Australia's government. Nothing but white folks, as far as their prime ministers, historically never had a person of color leading that country, even though it's an Aboriginal country that should be controlled by Aborigines. But they did the right thing. They passed gun control laws. They've stopped mass shootings.
Well, of course, though, you must remember as well, to be fair, that guess what demographic the victims were. And guess which demographic in Australia had exclusive access to such weapons anyway. There was no dilution factors there. It was clear. that if this was going to happen again, it was only going to be one demographic of people who could get their hands on the weapons anyway, and they lived where there's another demographic. So they did it because it hit home right off the bat. And, again, like I said, everybody wanted the political mileage. There was no NRA there. See, that's the difference. It's not one-sided in the halls of Congress on gun control. The NRA, I agree, has a ridiculous amount of power. And it's not even their membership that makes it that way. It's their leadership of the NRA. So that's the problem. There are two strong sides. Again, that's why it'll never be solved, because then half the money is going to go away.
The amount of contributions to people in Congress, nearly all Republicans, is astronomical. The money that the NRA gives to people in Congress, and you see that with other big societal problems of this country. You look at racism. Even one of the two self-identifying Native women who got into Congress, she's taken a knife to her own people. Sharice Davids took money from Wells Fargo, which was one of the biggest financiers of the Dakota Access Pipeline. So the people in charge, people with political power in this country, they are making sure that these problems continue. If you're going to have Raytheon, Chase, Wells Fargo, Boeing, Lockheed Martin, etc., have that much of an influence on your Congress, well, geez, these problems are just going to keep happening. It's just the way it is. The way that this Congress is set up, getting help from the evil corporations. That's the way you do it. That's the way you hop into Washington politics. The sad thing is, it doesn't matter what color or creed you are. If you join Washington politics, you're on their side. It sounds like hyperbole to say that, like just to say it's that simple, but it really is. You can't name a single person in Congress who isn't an asshole. You can't. It's impossible. They're all awful. They're all the same. They're all the same. Every single one. Black, white, green, woman, man, transgender, doesn't matter. Every single one. And it's sad. These are the people controlling our lives. When people talk about freedom and black folks and Native folks in this country, I can't use the word freedom. I mean, we're still being oppressed. We're still without our freedom. Our lives are still controlled by somebody else. And gun laws and all these other problems that hurt so many people, the people in charge are making sure that their pockets are being lined, their political careers are being advanced, and that's what matters to them. It's not, oh, well, let's solve these problems. Let's actually help these people. People are dying every day because of gun violence, and it's anybody with any sense will see, well, geez, this problem has become just so vast and utterly ridiculous. So we should probably do something about it right now. But the NRA just gave me $50,000 for my next campaign. I can't do anything about it now.
There are no good politicians. That's the theme of this show.
Yeah.
We came full circle.
That and money. The other theme of this particular show.
Yeah. So it's 4:00. We gotta end the show. Anything else you want to say real quick, either one of you? Nope. Cool. I like this show.
Have a good weekend.
Yeah.
I'll say that.
Have a good after genocide weekend.
Yeah.
Yeah. It was a nice show. I didn't have to talk a lot. I like that. Should do this more often. So cool. Thanks you guys. Thanks to the people listening, and we'll see y'all next week.